right, we are going. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Let me just check. I'm making sure that our live stream is going. So let's give it a few seconds. All right, we are going. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. I missed this. This is Creepy Cocktail Hour number 13 on Friday the 13th. I couldn't have planned it better had I done it on purpose. This actually should be Creepy Cocktail Hour number 14, but 13 never happened because I got deathly ill in January. So 13th on Friday the 13th. You're welcome. Hi, I'm Valerie, and I'm one half of the show Don't Watch at Night, which is a podcast dedicated to lifting up Spanish language and Latin American horror, spooky movies. So I host the podcast with my sister Veronica, who does not typically take part in the Creepy Cocktail Hours, although maybe one day, who knows? You never know. We're doing this on a Friday afternoon at 5:00. I'm pretty sure she's either still at work or on the way home from work, so she can't always get away. So hi friends. Hi. I got my pin. I want to make sure that I am doing everything that I set out to do on the agenda. We have a really big agenda. I have stuff today. So what we're going to be talking about today, we can go ahead and get to, I guess, the cocktail portion. I always like to do that really quickly because I usually have ice sitting next to me. So we're actually in my my dining area, so which has changed a lot. I think if you follow our cocktail hours, last cocktail hour was talking about how I rearranged my house, and so the dining room is now a parlor, if you will, and this area, which is kind of like a naturally very well lit natural light room. Find your words, Valerie. Natural light room. And was sort of the breakfast area, but we always used it as kind of like a sunroom, and it's where I had like buttload of plants. I've shifted the plants around the house, so they're scattered throughout now, and the dining table is here. Behind me, we have all of our cookbooks so that you think I cook way more than I usually do. It's not a very creepy room, as you can see. Certainly the office where we do the podcast, far creepier. The parlor, far creepier. But we do what we can. This is where we are today. So let's get to the cocktail. What we're talking about today is a little bit of Prohibition history, which is a favorite topic of mine. Is it creepy? No, not really. Although, frankly, I think old America is creepy as hell. So I think it qualifies. So Prohibition history, certainly cocktails are something we can talk about with regards to Prohibition history. But then also we'll close with a little bit of spookiness as it relates to Prohibition history, hauntings and creepy things of that time period. So, I mean, the thing to know about Prohibition cocktails, and we're going to get into like the history of Prohibition. I have pages prepared for you, but there's like a bug. There's like a bug. It's going to bother me. I'm going to slap the mic. Okay, anyway, thought Prohibition cocktails. Yeah. So a lot of what you'll see is this is where the use of fruits and juices and sweeteners of any kind like that were really used in abundance in order to mask the taste of the booze, which was generally cheaply made, quickly made. And so you needed those things to kind of mask the taste of less than desirable produced booze. This is where we get bathtub gin, because gin was relatively easily and cheaply produced. So a lot of cocktails incorporated gin, but because we've done so much gin already on our Creepy Cocktail Hour archives, I wanted to go in a different direction. And sure enough, Scotch is something that Americans did smuggle over. They were able to get Scotch across and smuggle it in during Prohibition time. Was it as prevalent? Was it highbrow Scotch? I don't know. That's debatable, probably. But this bug's going to bother the crap out of me. But it did happen. So I decided, because I haven't really done a Scotch cocktail on our creepy cocktail hours before, that we would do that. Okay. So today we're going to make something called the Bobby Burns. And what I'm going to do is, because you know me, I am going to attempt to share my screen real quick just so you can see what we're doing. I sure hope you can see this. Here we go. Going for it. Can you see it? Let me just make sure. We're at liquor.com, which is a beloved website of mine. I frequent it all the time. I'm just going to wait just a few seconds because our live stream, there it is. Okay. Our live stream, as it appears, there's a little bit of a delay. So I always want to make sure. And sure enough, you can see the screen. So this is the Bobby Burns in a beautiful glass, garnished with a lemon rind. So just a little bit of history about it. It's not as renowned as drinks like the Manhattan or the Sidecar or the Martini. Sidecar, also a very popular Prohibition era cocktail. But the Bobby Burns is a classic cocktail dating back to the early part of the 20th century. Close to the rusty nail or blood and sand, it has the rare quality of being made with a blended Scotch whiskey rather than a bourbon or rye. Like many storied cocktails, the origins of the Bobby Burns are a little bit fuzzy. The first available source for it dates to a 1902 bar book called Bishop and Babcock Company's Fancy Drinks. Though it's referred to in that book as the Baby Burns, it calls for 1 teaspoon each of vermouth and Benedictine. I think I'm saying that right. The recipe that we're working with today is a little bit different. Same ingredients, but different proportions, as well as a pony, generally considered 1 ounce of Scotch. Later, it appears in texts like Recipes for Mixed Drinks, which came out in 1917, and then 1930s Savoy Cocktail Book from Harry Craddock. That's where the name gets changed to Bobby Burns. And while there's always going to be some debate as to the meaning of the name, it's likely in homage to the famed Robert Burns, who was widely considered the national poet of Scotland. So it is similar to a Rob Roy, which is another famous Scot. The Scotch-based, the Rob Roy is a Scotch-based Manhattan variation. I'm sorry. So let's jump down to it. This link for you guys is also provided in our resource links, which if you're part of our Patreon, you get these ahead of time. You get them ahead of our cocktail hours always. And if you're watching from somewhere else, just know everything I talk about today, all of our resources, we will be sharing after the live stream is over. Okay. I will post that for you and you will know exactly where I went and where I pulled information from. So the ingredients for a Bobby Burns as we are making it is 1 ounce blended Scotch whiskey, ideally a 12-year-old, 1 ounce sweet vermouth, 1/2 ounce Benedictine, and then you garnish with a lemon peel. That's it. Okay. So let me stop share for a second. So disclaimer, I have very little experience with Scotch. I have had Scotch. I enjoy-ish Scotch. I've been to Scotch tastings, and at that Scotch tasting, we got a lot of like the history of Scotch and all that stuff. So like, I'm not like unfamiliar with it, but because I don't drink it a lot, I certainly don't incorporate in cocktails, and I'll get to why in a second. But I just don't have enough of a history of it personally, me imbibing with that. The reason I don't use it in a lot of cocktails is I am married to somebody who does love Scotch, and he would be appalled if I incorporated it into a cocktail, because his answer to, hey, what do you drink with Scotch, is more Scotch. So the idea of incorporating it and mixing it in with a cocktail is absurd to him. And it might be absurd to some people who watch this live stream at some point. So I'm sorry. The other thing is, like, this recipe calls for a blended Scotch. And as you can see behind me, that's not what I picked up today, largely because I didn't know what to pick up. So I went with a single malt, which I'm pretty sure you should mix that even less because it's a beautiful single malt. I don't know. I'm sorry. If I'm offending anyone, I apologize. Let me reach for this bottle. So I can't even tell you if I've had this before. I want to say I have. It looks familiar to me. I don't think I'm going to be able to pronounce this correctly. Shieldag, single malt Scotch whiskey. It is. Why did I think it was 12 year? I don't know what made me think that. I don't see that on here. Probably not 12 year, but ideally, but it is nice. I have pre-measured my ingredients and I smelled it. It smells lovely. Has a nice little bit of a smoky, peaty, I think is what they call it, peaty flavor profile smell to it. So this is what we're going with. Okay. And I am tweaking my recipe just a little bit in that I'm going to be doing, because I didn't really have that much sweet vermouth left. I need to stock up. So I did like 3/4 ounce red vermouth, sweet vermouth, sorry. 1/2 ounce Benedictine. I kept that the same. And then I'm doing 1.5 ounces of the Scotch. Okay. So I'm not following the recipe verbatim, but we're going to give it a go. We're going to see how it goes. All right. I haven't been taking in too many cocktails lately because, like I said, I was really sick last month. Doing so much better, but man, I thought I was going to die. I was ready to die. So I haven't been imbibing a whole lot. But this isn't Navy strength rum, right? Like a few cocktail hours ago. So I should be okay. All right. So let's start. I have my cocktail shaker, which I have ice sitting in this Yeti cup. And let me see if I can get it in here. Sorry for the, damn it. I think this happened last time too. I'm just waiting. Here we go. I'm just waiting for one day. Give me my ice. One day. Nailed it. Okay. And then I have so I have my sweet vermouth and my Benedictine measured out together into the glass that goes. And I have my 1.5 ounces of my single malt Scotch whiskey. But ideally, you would be working with a blended Scotch as the recipe calls for. And you feel like there should be some bitters in this, but it doesn't call for any, so we're not doing it. And I'm going to shake it up. And then I do have a glass. I'm going to jump off camera for a second. I do have a glass that I'm going to pull from the freezer because you know I love me a chilled glass. So here we go. Shaking. If you are drinking something, please let me know. You know I always love to hear it. It is a Friday. It is Friday the 13th. Now, if you are a purist, hold on. Okay, if you are a purist, then perhaps you are watching Friday the 13th later. And I will share with you something about that in just a second. I'm going to go grab my glass. So I'm going to leave you looking at our lovely faces for just a second while I go do that. I'll be right back. All right. 1 second. All right, my friends. Oh, I can smell that Scotch. And I'm sure that's what was drawing that bug. Look at my nice chilled glass. So if you are watching Friday the 13th later, we do have, it was a Patreon bonus episode, a film commentary episode on that movie. So I will link it for my Patreon fam again after this live stream. Okay. And you can listen to it later while you watch your movie if you want to. Okay. So the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to express an orange peel. Try to anyway. Not an orange peel, a lemon peel over my glass. I am not good at cutting them to look pretty like you do when you're a professional bartender. If anybody has tips and tricks for that, please share because I would love to know. Okay, here we go. The Bobby Burns, our Prohibition era cocktail. Cheers. That's delicious. That's great. So smooth. I have not. That's not true. I have had a Scotch cocktail. That's not true. I have made a smoked Hudson before for my husband. That's one of our favorite cocktails, and it is the only cocktail that he will allow me to do Scotch with. And that one calls for a Lefroy because you want something really smoky. This is really lovely. This is smooth. The Benedictine adds something to it that is a little bit sweet. The Benedictine is also something that we incorporate in a smoked Hudson. A smoked Hudson, we incorporate a little bit of bourbon. I want to say a rye, but don't quote me on that. And then a little bit of Lefroy and Benedictine, and maybe like an Amaro. But anyway, so it's a boozy cocktail. But this is lovely and so smooth. It was really great. That is really great. I did not anticipate that I would really like it. I didn't really know because I didn't know. I couldn't remember if I've had this or not before, but I'm quite sure I have. So, and my husband will be happy that I picked up a bottle of that. So, cheers. Cheers to me. Okay. So, hold on. Crossing that off my list. Like I said, if you're drinking something, don't forget to share with me because I love to hear it. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's talk about Prohibition, guys. You may already know Prohibition really well, and if you do, excellent, good for you. I certainly always jump at the opportunity to watch a documentary on this stuff. I love it, but I don't consider myself any kind of expert. So if you think you're coming here talking to some historian who likes cocktails, I hate to break it to you, no. Everything, much of what I'm going to be talking about right now, I have pulled from Britannica.com, but then there are a bunch of other resources that I also reference. And so, like I said, if you are part of our Patreon, you already have links to that stuff. And if you are not, I will share that stuff with you after the live stream is over. I will not be sharing my screen as much as I typically do, but I will be sharing it for one particular thing we're going to talk about later. Okay. In the meantime, pages, let's go. Okay. I got to keep track of time. Yeah, we're doing good. So, Prohibition. And by the way, I'm not off book. That's the other thing. I'm not off book. So I am going to be reading from my report here and just go with me. It's going to seem like I'm, this is giving high school. This is giving book report. And it is. So it's fine. Prohibition was the legal prevention of the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages in the United States from 1920 to 1933 under the terms of the 18th Amendment. Although the temperance movement, which was widely supported at the time, had succeeded in bringing about this legislation, millions of Americans were willing to drink liquor, distilled spirits illegally, which gave rise to bootlegging, which is the illegal production and sale of liquor, speakeasies. These were like illegal, secretive drinking establishments, both of which were capitalized upon by organized crime. So as a result, the Prohibition era is remembered as a period of gangsterism, characterized by competition and violent turf battles between criminal gangs, but also, and we'll get to it, also some organized activity between criminal gangs. So it wasn't all just warring with each other. They did find ways to work together in some instances for some operations. Okay, so let's take a look. In the United States, we see a rise of movements for state and local prohibition coming out of the intense religious revivalism of the 1820s and the 1830s. This is where we saw the push for temperance really take root. And it was often aligned with the abolitionist movement, which I think most of us know, as well, since both abolitionists and temperance reformers often saw drinking and slavery as moral failings and sinful evils, which, slavery, shitty. Okay, fun fact. The first state prohibition law was passed in Maine way back in 1846. And with that came a wave of similar state legislation elsewhere right before the Civil War. I believe it was the Civil War where we kind of saw that get put on the back burner. And then after the Civil War, we saw a resurgence of that. I'm sorry, I'm sweating. It is in the high 70s here in Texas. Winter be done. The spring is springing, and with that is coming our hotter temperatures. Okay, so prohibition restrictions were already something that a lot of people were familiar with before the federal ban even came down. Okay, let me take a sip. I'm worried that I'm worried at some point there's going to be a bug in my drink, but as my son would say, good source of protein. Okay, so So, like we said, some states had been enacting their own legislation prior to the Civil War. Civil War hits. There's a little bit of a pause on all of that because it's not the most pressing thing on anybody's mind. And then after the Civil War, Wayne Wheeler, who was the leader of the Anti Saloon League, brings forth the 18th Amendment, which passed in both chambers of Congress in 1917, and it was ratified by 3/4 of the states by January of 1919. It required Congress to pass enforcement legislation, and that was brought by Andrew Volstead, who was chairman of the House Judiciary Committee at the time. The the National Prohibition Act, also known as the Volstead Act, passes, and allowed it passed over the veto of President Woodrow Wilson. And so on January 17th, 1920, national prohibition goes into effect. Was it successful? No, it was not. So, yes, drinking did largely decrease for a brief period at the start, but many of the problems that prohibition was supposed to solve, it actually made it even worse. So let's talk about it. We've already mentioned it before. Entire industries like bootlegging, speakeasies, distilleries, those all really rose to prominence. I don't want to say popularity, but prominence during this period. The earliest bootleggers began smuggling foreign-made commercial liquor into the United States from across the Canadian and Mexican borders and along the sea coast from ships under foreign registry. Their favorite sources of supply were the Bahamas, Cuba, and French islands off the southern coast of Newfoundland. If I said that right, I'm sorry. A favorite rendezvous of the rum running ships was a point opposite Atlantic City, New Jersey, just outside the 3-mile limit beyond which the U.S. government lacked jurisdiction. The bootleggers anchored in that area and discharged their loads into high-powered craft that were built to outrun U.S. Coast Guard cutters. So elaborate stuff. As I said, gin was popular as a spirit because it was fairly cheap and easy to produce. Cocktails of that period really, like I said, really played up the use of fruits, juices, and other sweeteners that were basically intended to mask the taste of the booze because it was being so quickly and cheaply produced and not regulated. So really, this was cocktail innovation perhaps at its best. Well, I don't know that it was at its best. I think we're living in a really great time for cocktail innovation. I think we have been for some time now. But this was cocktail innovation born out of necessity, which makes it just really cool from a historic standpoint. With the bootlegging came basically the birth of American organized crime. And because this distribution of illegal liquor was far more complex and risky than even other types of criminal activity, it became necessary for gangs to really organize and, like I said, even work together across cities and surrounding areas to maintain operations and control. So even though, yes, you did absolutely have lots of war and gang activity, you also had lots of what's the word I'm looking for? Partnership, for lack of another way to put it, partnership amongst gang activity, working together for a common cause. The American Mafia crime syndicate arose out of the coordinated activities of Italian bootleggers and other gangsters in New York City in the late 20s and early 30s, and not just in New York City. So this is the era of Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, Johnny Torrio, Big Jim Colosimo, and so many others. So many others. So let me take a sip. We're moving through it. And here I thought this was going to be way too much information, and I wasn't going to be able to get to all of it with you. I will tell you. Hold on. Let me not lose my place. I will tell you that in doing my research today, I came across a bar that I'm going to talk about here in the Austin area, which is where I'm at, that I didn't know about, that's been around for 8 years at this point. And I'm like, I must go to there. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ghost tours that are very prevalent in places like Kentucky and here in Austin. And that's another thing I've never done that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do one of our walking ghost tours. I feel like we have multiple ones, and so it's hard to know which one is the one that I should do. If you are listening and you are local and you've done one of these or can recommend one, please tell me, because it's like a bucket list item for me. I want to do it. Okay. And my birthday's coming up in the summer. I'll be turning the 44, right? The 44. I need to do it. I need to do it. You know, the other thing I need to do? I need to go to Sleepy Hollow. That's also a bucket list thing that I need to do. I've been telling Veronica, I'm like, we should go. We should do it as a team. But yeah, we need to schedule it and make it happen. So anyway, what led to the demise of Prohibition? Well, for one thing, over time, it just became really increasingly unpopular. People hated it. And especially as the Great Depression, which was also going on during this time, especially as the Great Depression wore on following the stock market trash. Following the stock market trash of 1929, the crash of 1929, Prohibition also just became increasingly less and less enforceable. So in March of 1933, new President Franklin D. Roosevelt signs the Cullen-Harrison Act. And what that did at the time was amend the Prohibition law a little bit so that the manufacturing and sales of low alcohol beer and wines could occur. So this was stuff that was up to 3.2% ABV. So not any higher than that. But that wasn't enough. And so just 9 months later, on December 15th, 1933, Prohibition was repealed Prohibition was repealed at the federal level with the ratification of the 21st Amendment. And to be clear, the 21st Amendment did sort of, it didn't take away states' ability to maintain their own bans if they wished to. It just meant that there was not going to be a federal ban in place anymore. So that day, December 5th, 1933, became known as Repeal Day, and the people poured forth into the streets for merriment and jubilee. Headlines around the world told of the end of Prohibition, with bars emptying out into the streets and drinks that were served up for mere coins. I read somewhere, and then I couldn't find it again, but I bet it's somewhere in the resources we have for you guys. I read somewhere that cocktails were being served up on the dollar menu, which I think is so cute. I think that's so great. Were you to ever have a roaring 20s party? And I'm not saying you should. As a matter of fact, there's many that now consider them to be pretty crass. But were you to, the dollar cocktail menu is delightful. I think that's such a cute idea. Perhaps the most iconic image of the day, however, it was the introduction of Budweiser's Clydesdale horses strolling down Pennsylvania Avenue delivering beer to the White House. So let me just pause for a second and take a sip, and then I'm going to share screen to cover some additional fun facts about Prohibition that you may or may not be aware of. Interestingly enough, anytime we've done a cocktail hour, and we've done 13 of them now at this point, these are shared almost exclusively on Patreon. Every now and then we'll pitch one out to the YouTube community, but they're all on Patreon. We've never released one as like a podcast episode. But that might change. You know, we might take maybe the most fun, interesting one that I've managed to produce thus far, and maybe we'll release it. Who knows? Anything's possible. Okay, so let's share this screen to cover a few more fun facts about Prohibition before we get to other things to discuss about Prohibition. It's just all Prohibition today. I really do. It is a topic of history that I find interesting. So yes, when I tell you I have watched documentaries on this, multiple documentaries on this, I have. But I had so much fun researching this today because it just gave me an excuse to dive into fun stuff. Like here we are at There is a mob museum, the mobmuseum.org, which is where I'm pulling this information from. Odd facts and stories from Prohibition. So I'm just going to take you through a few of them. I'm not going to walk you through all of them, but you will have access to this link if you don't already. So, did you know that Congress had its own bootlegger known as the Man in the Green Hat? Members of Congress who wanted alcohol during Prohibition could turn to Capitol Hill's top bootlegger, George L. Cassidy. Cassidy, you want to say Cassidy, but it's spelled Cassidy, walked through the halls of Congress, making up to 25 deliveries of illegal booze a day, while Capitol Police allowed him in at all hours. Isn't that fascinating? Over 5 years, he supplied bottles of whiskey, moonshine, scotch, bourbon, and gin from a sturdy leather briefcase. When I tell you this was failed policy from the jump, um, just to know that lawmakers were pretty openly, at least amongst themselves, defying the law for 5 years minimum. His politician friends got him a room to work out of in the House office building. In 1925, when he was arrested while ferreting 6 quarts of whiskey to a House member, he had on a light green hat. And from press accounts, the Man in the Green Hat just stuck. Cassidy pleaded guilty and simply switched to selling in the Senate office building. His infamy spread to the office of Vice President Charles Curtis, who set up a sting operation in 1930 with a Prohibition agent, dry spy watching Cassidy from the Senate stationery store. Cassidy was arrested with 6 bottles of gin and his client list, which was never published. Wouldn't you love to get your hands on that? And he was sentenced to a year in prison. Cassidy later wrote that he helped 80% of Congress violate Prohibition laws. Amazing. So, this next one I wasn't going to bring up, but I will, just because in the Britannica.com article I looked at, this quote is mentioned. So to know this as a did you know is very interesting. Herbert Hoover never referred to Prohibition as a noble experiment necessarily. His quote was taken out of context, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. Let me take a sip. Okay. Gotta wet the palate. Okay. Oh, which is so funny because this is where I'm going to mention a really gross term. Okay, here we go. Many books and articles on Prohibition have quoted President Herbert Hoover describing Prohibition as a noble experiment, but Hoover himself complained that he was misquoted. He was a confirmed supporter of Prohibition, and he campaigned on it when he was elected. He made this pro-dry statement at the Republican National Convention that year. This was the quote: "Our country has deliberately undertaken a great social and economic experiment, noble in motive and far-reaching in purpose." But years after leaving office, he says he was misunderstood. This phrase, "a great social experiment, noble in motive," was distorted into just noble experiment, which of course was not at all what I said or intended to say. It was an unfortunate phrase because it could be turned into derision. Moreover, to regard the Prohibition law as an experiment did not please the extreme dries, and to say it was noble in motive did not please the extreme wets. Which, let's talk about that. Extreme dries, obvious. Those are the people who supported Prohibition. Extreme wets were the people who did not. My beef is with the term extreme wets. It is a hilarious term. And if any phrase be on my epitaph one day, let it say that I was an extreme wet. Okay? Moving on. This next one we're not going to dive into too much, but it's just worth noting that Al Capone's oldest brother was himself a Prohibition enforcement agent. And the end of Prohibition made U.S. constitutional history in that the repeal of the 18th Amendment by the 21st Amendment was the first and only time the Constitution was amended by state constitutional conventions and state legislatures, and the only time that an amendment abolished a previous one. Yeah, the Prohibition Party still exists. So let's talk about that because you may or may not be aware of that. Among the early organizations to support prohibiting alcohol in the United States was the Prohibition Party, formed in 1869 with the intent to elect politicians who oppose alcoholic beverages. The Prohibition Party remains America's oldest third party, older than the Green Party. It was the first political party to permit women as members. Thomas Nast, the famed cartoonist from Harper's Weekly in the late 1800s, who created the elephant to symbolize the Republican Party and the donkey for the Democrats, settled on the camel for the Prohibition Party. Since that animal, the camel, drinks only water. It's kind of perfect. The Prohibition Party is today little more than a curiosity with very little support left. Its platform remains opposed to alcohol as well as tobacco. Its candidate for president in the United States in 2012 garnered just 519 votes nationwide. And in 2016, the party nominated James Hedges of Iowa for president and Bill Bays of New York for vice president. So as late as 2016, 10 years ago, they were active to the point of nominating people for president. So again, something else that we all know, but bears repeating, some of the top leaders of the women's rights movement started out in the temperance movement that led to prohibition. And we know this. Women's rights activists of the 19th century, such as Susan B. Anthony, Amanda Bloomer, and Lucy Stone, started in the anti-alcohol or temperance movement. The unprecedented impact women had on the temperance movement led not only to prohibition, but to women's suffrage. So the drive that led to the 18th Amendment, according to mommuseum.org, no doubt propelled the states only a year after enacting prohibition to pass the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote nationally in 1920. So yeah, interesting. And speakeasies, older than prohibition. Speakeasies often were located behind doors that were painted green. So if I were, and I say it a little bit in jest, but if my husband were to ever green light it, I would be in a heartbeat. I have often talked to him. I was like, hey, what if you and I became business partners and we opened up a cocktail, like a craft cocktail house together, and really invested in an establishment that serves excellent craft cocktails and food and all of those things, like just a new establishment. And I always say it in jest. I know it's a hard industry to get into, but again, if you were to ever take me up on it, I'd be like, done, let's go, I'm in. We wouldn't we would be investors and we would hire the right people who actually know what the hell they're doing. But knowing this, I would paint our doors green. Our doors would be green. It would be symbolic. So during Prohibition, chances were that a door painted green meant it fronted as a speakeasy. In Chicago, that tradition lives on with two of the town's well-known bars dating from the 1920s. The Green Door Tavern and North Orleans Street is an Irish pub that opened in 1921 and is tucked away in the Green Door's basement. Anyway, lots of fun stuff. This is the last one, and then I'll move on because this is how I always start. I always think we have all the time in the world. I still have more stuff to talk about. So last one, make that go away. Okay. In an age of segregation, Prohibition brought white and black patrons together in what they called black and tan clubs. So in many parts of the United States in the 1920s, segregation of black and white communities was the rule, if not the law. Remember, 1920s is where we get the birth of the Klan, right? So the peculiar circumstances of the Prohibition era challenged this. So-called black and tans referred to speakeasies and nightclubs where white people and black people socialized and danced together as patrons. Ironically, Prohibition began right as jazz music was emerging as the pop music of America. Jazz music, which is Black American music. And it was becoming with younger white people. In New York, the center of American jazz in the mid-20s is where you'd have many young white people who would venture into predominantly black Harlem districts to mingle and hear jazz performed by mostly Black American band members in small clubs. The same thing happened in many jazz clubs on Chicago's South Side. Dance crazes of the 20s, such as the Charleston, the Foxtrot, the Lindy Hop, those were all popularized by mostly white crowds listening to Black American musicians perform jazz music. So, among the well known Black and Tan clubs, I'm putting that in quotes, during Prohibition were Connie's Inn, owned by bootlegger Conrad Immerman, and Small's Paradise in New York, the Sunset Cafe, where jazz greats like Louis Armstrong and Cab Calloway played in Chicago, and the Alhambra, renamed the Black and Tan in 1933, on Jackson Street in Seattle. Other speakeasies in the wealthy, let's start again. Other speakeasies for the wealthy, such as the Cotton Club, owned by bootlegger Oni Madden in Harlem, had white people as patrons with Black Americans as jazz performers and service staff. So the term Black and Tan for an integrated bar or place. Let's start again. I'm sorry, guys. The term Black and Tan for an integrated bar or place did not originate in the 1920s. It was in use decades earlier. So the phrase comes up repeatedly in an 1890 book called How the Other Half Lives by American journalist and photographer Jacob Ries. His last name is Riis. His book chronicled the lives of impoverished people of various ethnic groups living in New York's cramped and dirty tenements in the 1880s. He said, or he wrote, the borderland where the white and Black races meet in common debauch. The aptly named Black and Tan Saloon has never been debatable ground from a moral standpoint. It has always been the worst of the desperately bad. So, just a fascinating look at information you may not be familiar with from the Prohibition era. And I believe I have stopped shared. Yes. Have I? I have. Okay. So that was a lot. Let's take a break. Let's take a sip. Okay. So if you're in places like, and I really have to work to pronounce this, Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville. I did my best. If you're in places like Louisville, there are all kinds of Prohibition era haunted tours and tastings. Same thing. I've already said the same thing if you're here in Austin, really. So in Louisville, you'll hear quite a lot about Whiskey Row. During the time of Prohibition, Whiskey Row had wholesale distilleries closed down, but some businesses were able to get by through selling medicinal whiskey. You had producers like Old Forester, which is still around, obviously, who were able to navigate the restrictions, and they found the very limited ways in which they were able to operate legally and endure. And I guess much of that would have been through selling their products for medicinal purposes. Sorry. Old Forester master taster Jackie Zeichen has shared, and I'm pulling this from it's linked in our resources. I don't remember exactly where I pulled it from, but it is linked. Old Forester master taster Jackie Zeichen has shared how Whiskey Row is actually rife with paranormal activity. Prior to this job, she was the beverage director at Doc Crow's, formerly called the Bonnie Brothers Rye Company. And so this is what she had to say about her time at Doc's. She says, at Doc's, the area near the service well above the computer is well known for being a place of flying glassware. Things would literally launch off the shelf above the computer for absolutely no reason, and menus would place themselves on tables at night when no one else was in the building. The biggest item, and she says this is on security tapes, this was caught on tape, was one morning the manager came in to open the store, and the middle door in the front of the building was wide open with a giant, super heavy, all caps, solid wood table in the middle of it. Reviewing the tape from the night before revealed that in the middle of the night, the table literally thrust the locked door open. Something shoved this table through the door, blew it open, and no one was around. I went off quote there for a minute. That was me interjecting. Back to the quote. She says, "We assumed the front area of Dock Crows to be the site of General Nelson's death, or possibly the street right in front of the building. But whatever the case, there is something in that building." So, and General Nelson was a Union general during the Civil War. He was murdered at the original Galt House Hotel by a subordinate officer and has been suspected as the responsible party for much of the paranormal activity in the building, though there are others. Here in Austin, this is that bar I was telling you about. Here in Austin, there is a place called Dumont's Down Low. That's a fun name, which has only been around since 2018. And the building itself, however, is historic. It's been around much longer than that. And it has reports of all kinds of activity. So I just want to mention, I'm going to breach my conversation right now to mention this. The people who manage Dumont's also run Midnight Cowboy. And so if you're here in the Austin area and you love a good craft cocktail like I do, then you already know about Midnight Cowboy. It kind of operates as a speakeasy. It's a really great place, wonderful atmosphere, wonderful cocktails, and bartenders at the top of their game. Can't say enough good things about it. So to know that the same group that manages that space manages Dumont's makes me like this place I must visit, and soon. And I looked at photos of it online. It looks very cool. So Dumont's Down Low. Give it a gander if you're in the Austin area. The building itself was constructed in the mid 1800s, and it's one of the oldest commercial structures in Austin. It sits within Austin's warehouse district, which, for those of you who have been in Austin a very long time, Austin's warehouse district wasn't really truly very developed, even as far back as like 20 years ago. And I say this as someone who was going to college here in Austin at that time ish, around that time frame. And the warehouse district just wasn't what it is now. It has really bloomed in terms of a place for eateries and bars and all kinds of fun, trendy spaces. Which I say that the downside of that is that all of these wonderful, trendy spaces have made Austin largely less and less affordable for middle income people and low income people. But saving that rant for another day. Hold on. So good. During the late 19th century, the building functioned as a brothel run by Sally Daggett and Blanche Dumont, who were influential madams in Austin at the time. Prohibition in the 1920s transformed the building into a secret meeting place for underground social events. So a speakeasy, more than likely. It is said that the place is haunted by Blanche Dumont, one of those madams. And so what you might see, or what reports have indicated, is that there have been chairs and glasses that have been reported to move on their own, faint laughter, footsteps, sometimes floral smells will come through really strongly in the space. And staff have reported feeling a presence up behind the bar. So like I said, I myself have never been, but it sounds and looks like a beautiful place to visit. So we are definitely going to pop in there as soon as we can. And I would encourage you to do that as well if you're local, or if ever you are touring through Austin, that is a place. If ever you're touring through Austin, please talk to me. I would love to meet somebody who listens to us and watches these things, and we can go have a drink at Dumont's. That would be great. I would love it. Okay, so as to figures like Al Capone, who we talked about earlier, who ruled Chicago in much of the 20s. This in particular is very popular, and I've heard this before, and I'm sure you have too, but we're going to cover all of our bases, right? So Al Capone was sentenced to 11 years in 1931, and initially he was sent to Cook County Jail before being transferred to Atlanta, and then finally transferred to the infamous Alcatraz. And later, he was transferred to a mental health hospital, but in Alcatraz. So in I want to say 1934, don't quote me on that, but I think 1934 is when he went to Alcatraz. There, he took to playing the banjo with the prison band there. He would often practice in an empty shower room, likely for the acoustics, but I don't know. And it has been reported that visitors to Alcatraz have heard a ghostly banjo emanating from the shower room as well as from his cell, which his cell originally was B181. It was later renumbered to B206. Capone himself was said to have been perpetually haunted and tormented by a ghost of his own, one of his victims from the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. How fitting on Valentine's Day weekend, who was named Jimmy Clark. Though many historians now believe, and I think it's kind of widely believed, that these were likely the hallucinations brought on by his very advanced illness by that point. So, at about 20 years of age, Capone had worked as a bouncer in a brothel, and it was there that he contracted syphilis. He did not get that treated, obviously, and so his disease advanced into neurosyphilis, leading to dementia. And after serving 6.5 years in prison, Capone was released in 1939 to a mental hospital in Baltimore, where he remained for 3 years. His health only worsened. And in 1946, his physician and a Baltimore psychiatrist concluded that Capone had the mental capacity of a 12-year-old child. He died of cardiac arrest on January 25th, 1947, and he is buried at Mount Carmel Cemetery in Hillside, Illinois. I have no more drink. It's all done. That was great. I enjoyed that so much. I hope you did too. So let me talk a little bit about other things. I want to keep creepy cocktail hour is going. Let me preface it. Creepy cocktail hour is going to continue for as long as you and I like cocktails and we enjoy doing this. And I love doing this. This is so much fun for me. So cocktail hours for days. But I would love to occasionally rope in and like make it a little bit more of like a craft along. I myself am no Christine McConnell. I will I love her. I support her. But I can't do what she does, and I'm not even going to try. But craft alongs are fun, and they're a great opportunity for us to sort of just get together and make something simple, doable, achievable, and continue having creepy cocktails. So I'm not saying that we will not continue creepy topics, but I'm saying every now and then I would like to sort of make our creepy cocktail hour be centered around something crafty. Okay. So I'm not saying that's coming up immediately, but on the horizon, every now and again, one of our creepy cocktail hours will be just a craft along. And just all you got to do is just come. You can bring a craft that you're working on, or I will always find a doable, achievable craft for us and we'll make it work in that time span, or at least at the very least I'll get you on a good start to completing your craft on your own after the live stream is over. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and this is primarily to our Patreon friends, I want to talk a little bit about the DWAN, which is Don't Watch at Night, DWAN cocktail recipe book, which is really like a magazine. Okay, I want to let you know that it is complete. And a proof arrived to my home this week, and I was so unhappy with the proof that I am going back to we're going to make some revisions, number one. But then number two, I'm going to figure out what the hell happened in the printing process, because what I sent them is not what I received back. I was really disappointed in the printing quality. And so all this to say, I wasn't happy with it. We're revising some things, and it is coming. So I just want you to know that it is complete, and we are just working on final stages of just getting a finished product that I think is good and worthy to send your way. This is going out specifically and only to the $3 tier. So the $3 tier Patreon supporters that we have are getting this book shipped to them, and it is their gift. It was supposed to be their gift for Christmas, and here we are all the way in February. So, and that's not on the part of the printers. That's just delays, and our apologies for being so late in getting this to you, but it is done, and we are just working on finalizing it and making sure that it's a good quality product that we're going to be excited to have and that we're excited to give you. So, if you are not part of our Patreon community, it's free to join, and the $3 tier unlocks everything for you, and you get this book. And I'm just gonna kind of put it out there. Uh, past If you join Patreon and join the $3 tier now, you still have an opportunity to receive that book by March. That that won't be that won't be an automatic, but we will set it up so that if you want to buy that book, you can. So, and it's basically just it's all of our cocktail recipes and cocktail pairings that we've had for our book club. So, Don't Watch at Night is a kind of a movie focused podcast, but we do have a book club. And so, probably like 4 times a year, we have a book club episode where we discuss a book that we've picked out. And we always have a cocktail pairing with that. So, after three, like we're in year 3 now of show, we've accrued a number of cocktails, and we wanted to share that with our Patreon supporters, some of whom have been with us from the very beginning, and we love them so much. We they've become our friends, so it's wonderful to be able to give this to them, and we are working on it. It is so close, and it's coming. Just be ready for it. It's coming. So that's it. That's it. That's it. That's cocktail hour number 13. I hope you had so much fun. I loved sharing all this information with you. And I really hope that you will join us again for next month's cocktail hour. And a reminder that I will be linking the film commentary episode that we did for Friday the 13th so that you can listen to it while you watch Friday the 13th tonight. Okay, loves, have a great weekend. Love you. Be safe. And I will talk to you again soon.